Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Coffee Time with Byron. I am your host, Byron. This is episode number 60. Alongside me via StreamYard on YouTube and all available podcasts the following day. Former NFL lineman, I might add, tackle Howard Richards, who played for 1 year with the Seattle Seahawks, 5 years with the Dallas Cowboys. How are you tonight?
Doing fine. Actually, 6 years with Dallas from 81 to 86.
All right, I knew
And
I
that's
did
okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. You're pretty close. You're closer than a lot of people are, especially because it's been so long ago since I played. Yeah, so 6 at Dallas and Cowboys first round pick in 1981. Finished my career with the Seattle Seahawks in 87, which is my last season, and retired after that.
So before we get into it, your college career to your drafting of the Dallas Cowboys, let's talk about your former teams. I want to first start off with the Cowboys. It's a two-part question. With Jerry Jones being the owner and his sons taking over, him not thinking they need an actual general manager, can you see them winning a Super Bowl without a real general manager? And two, can you see them going far this year?
I think that remains to be seen. There are a lot of teams that have not won a Super Bowl without a general manager. The Cowboys have won a few Super Bowls without a general manager. They're and teams that so it all depends. It's great to have someone that can evaluate talent, that has a lot of experience in evaluating talent, collegiate talent, free agent market, and all that. Now, as long as the Joneses have owned this team, been affiliated with the Cowboys, one might say that they have gained enough experience in evaluating players and drafting players. So that all depends on how they finish. How many more years, will they go before they get back to a Super Bowl and ultimately win a Super Bowl? There's never a guarantee on that. There's never a guarantee in getting there, with or without a general manager. It's about obviously building and developing talent, signing the right free agents, especially in today's NFL. But above all that, you've got to have some good luck. Guys have to stay healthy. Players have to produce. They have to be in the right fit, offensively, defensively, whatever you're trying to do to scheme against other teams. So it's probably more. I'd say it's probably more. It's a little bit of science, but it's probably more of an art than anything. And again, it really takes a lot of luck, in addition to skill, talent, evaluation, expertise, to get there. And you might say those teams that have won multiple Super Bowls, or those that they've had a lot of luck, but they also have done it through skill and tremendous evaluation of players, development of those players, and adapting their offensive and defensive schemes to the talent that they develop and bring in year in and year out.
Now I've got to ask you about this. He's a stud. I didn't see any of his games at Penn State, but just watching him, Micah Parsons, that dude is a beast. I didn't think he'd be on this level. Did you? He could be not only rookie of the year, but he's on the road to become defensive rookie of the year as well. I mean, what do you make of that in such a rise that he's had so far?
Listen, again, a lot of luck. Obviously, he's a talented player, and I didn't see any of his games at Penn State either. He may be more of a dominating player at the NFL level than he was at Penn State. Um, he's a guy that has, I think, adapted well, especially given the fact that they've moved him around. He's played multiple positions, both linebacker and defensive end. He's had a lot of success really as an undersized defensive end, but he uses a tremendous combination of strength, speed, quickness, and he's got some pretty good moves. But speed kills, and he's got a knack and knows how to rush the passer. He's only a rookie. Can you imagine?
Right.
After year one, what he's capable of doing once he actually learns more of the game.
What he can do.
Yeah. I look at him. It's hard to make comparisons to guys that have been considered among the best at their positions. But I played against a guy who's probably considered the best linebacker to play this game. That'd been Lawrence Taylor.
Right.
But lots of similarities between Michael Parsons and Lawrence Taylor. Just the tremendous physical attributes. Really good football IQ, has just a nose for the football. Really can affect the quarterback and can change, changes the way offenses have to scheme. They have to scheme for him and make sure that they've got to account for this guy, no matter where he lines up. Not the easiest thing to do. If you look at his success, you'll see why. But it appears that the Cowboys got a good one. And, going forward, if they can continue to build on that defense around guys like Michael Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, then they've got something going. I think they still need to find some big run stoppers up front on the defense.
Without doubt.
You've still got to. I think you've got to really look hard at replacing some of your aging offensive linemen. Tyron Smith has had a number of injuries over the years and has missed some games even this year, and missed a lot of games last year. And Zach Martin's missed games. The kid at right tackle's missed games. So they've got to be able to get that offensive line back to what it was a few years ago. So you've got to be able to evaluate, draft players that are going to be in your system for a long time, guys that can make an impact right away. You already know what the mold is. So you need to go out and find some clones that can behave just like the guys that are starting right now.
Now, you already beat me to it, so I'm not going to ask that again because you beat me to it about their O-line. You obviously played tackle and you played O-line. I already know myself, since I'm a fan, I see it, how difficult it is to play a position like yours. But for those tuning in, with the little audience I do have, for those tuning in that's the casual fan, tell them, how difficult is it to play your position?
It's a position where you've got to be cerebral. You've got to be intelligent. You've got to be able to think and adjust very quickly to multiple changes along the defense. Pre-snap, once the ball snapped, teams will disguise looks on the defense. They'll show you something pre-snap and then do something completely different. Then there are teams that play multiple defensive fronts. When I was playing, we played the Washington Redskins, which, of course, the team was known then. The Washington football team now was known as the Redskins then. They would play – we'd have to prepare for as many as 15 different defensive fronts for one game. And it was interesting because if Washington was beating you, they'd sit in their base 4-3 and play that. If you were ahead and they were playing from behind, then they do a lot of change-up defenses. So again, you could see multiple defensive fronts, as many as 15. That's what you had to prepare for during Washington-Dallas week. So an offensive lineman, again, you've got to be cerebral. You've got to uh, anticipate changes. You've got to be able to adjust very quickly. You got to be a great listener because you got to hear audibles. You got to hear all that stuff when it's loud inside of a stadium. But you've got to be able to recognize defenses. You've also got to know what the guys next to you are doing. If someone gets hurt with a roster of 7 or 8 offensive linemen deep, you've got to be able to play multiple positions.
Right.
And so that's where, the teams that are looking for offensive linemen, they're looking for guys that have got a lot of experience and played a lot, especially in college if you're drafting someone, but guys that can have the flexibility to play multiple positions.
Now, what would you say since you played a total of 7 years? What would you say is the normal shelf life for a position like yours? Because I know it's a lot of toll on your body, but what would you say is the shelf life?
I haven't studied it lately, Byron, but if you just look at the overall NFL average career, it's about 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say it's probably about that, maybe a little bit less for an average offensive lineman. Plus, guys are probably shortening their careers deliberately now with the fear of concussions. When I was playing in the 80s, no one thought of or knew of the dangers of concussions. At least players didn't. A lot of the teams, we suspect as a players association, we suspect the teams. Well, we knew that the teams and doctors knew more about concussions than were being revealed to us.
Right.
Henceforth, all the changes, the movie Concussion and all the concussion settlement and all the things that have happened subsequent to those revelations. So I'd say, that average career is probably about the same, if not less than 3.5 years. Obviously, there are those that play much, much longer. It takes a lot of luck to get through an NFL career. Now, I will say this. NFL players and even players at the collegiate level, because of the attention that's been paid on injuries and concussions, the practice regimens, the training camp regimens are far, far more easy than they were when I played. They don't even do 2-a-days in the sport anymore. We did 2-a-days and practice in practice in full pads 2 to 3 days a week, even during a regular season. Right now, you can only have X amount of padded practices throughout your training camp and throughout the season. Guys rarely suit up in full pads today.
Right.
So those types of things, and you don't go full speed. Those types of things can prolong a career. But again, I think some guys are opting to play fewer years. The money is far greater than it used to be. So what I made in 7 years, these guys are making in 1 year.
Right.
So accumulating a lot of cash and being able to sock it away, of course, and save in 4 to 5 years or, a 10-year career, you're going to make money doing that, playing that sport, than you can do probably in any other field that you could ever imagine. So unless, of course, you become a high-powered lawyer or physician or, neuroscientist or something like that, some extreme field, if you will.
Right.
That's I think it'd be interesting to see what the actual figures are, what the studies actually say. I just am not that up on what that number actually is, especially for an offensive line.
Right. So you're one. I'm going to say this. I know there's more than this since there's a gob of you guys. So I'm just going to bring out a number. 1 out of every 10 get to play college ball where they're from in Missouri. You got to do it by playing in Missouri. What was that like in playing for basically where you grew up? What was that like?
I played for a pretty good high school team. In my 4 years, we either finished probably first or second in our conference. My sophomore year, we won the city title. We were undefeated. Only our defense only gave up 22 points the whole year, the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
We averaged 28 on offense. I think we had 7 or 8 shutouts that season, and so that carried us out, throughout the rest of my high school career. And we had 3 guys that went on to get Division I scholarships. Two of us went to the University of Missouri. One guy went to the University of Arkansas and played. Of those 3, I'm the one who's had the good fortune to go and finish my collegiate career and then move on to the NFL. So of all the guys that I'm aware of, there may have been only 1 or 2 other guys behind me that actually played, for at least a year or so in the National Football League. So that was a big deal to be able to come from the city of St. Louis, is where I'm born and raised, and then go on and play for the flagship institution, the University of Missouri. So I started as a 4-year starter, starting the last 4 games of my freshman year. I played a lot, but it wasn't until the last 4 games that I started, and then I started the next 3 seasons, never missed a game in college. Started every game, 40 straight. It was only during an 11-game season, plus a bowl game each year. Was a co-captain. Missouri at the time played in the Big 8, which at the time was the best football conference in America, better than the SEC. So the Big 8 then was what the SEC is today.
God, how times have changed, huh?
Yes.
Good old Nicky boy took over, Nick Saban.
Yeah, he's been a game changer. He's been a game changer, certainly at Alabama and just throughout college football. He's the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, he deserves it. He works extremely hard, has a tremendous knowledge of the game, has done a fantastic job of not only assembling staffs, but he is able to pick and choose additional assistant coaches when other assistants leave, right? So, guys that are coaching at the D1 level that have the list is a long list, from Kirby Smart at Georgia to Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, Mel Tucker at Michigan State, Mario Cristobal, who's now at the University of Miami, and Lane Kiffin.
Don't you find it funny, though, that I heard this stat yesterday on ESPN after Bill Belichick won against the Patriots? It's funny. None of his disciples.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? You said Bill Belichick won against the Patriots. He's the coach of the Patriots.
Sorry, won against the Bills. My bad.
The Bills last night.
I was getting into a stat. But yeah, I heard this stat. Now that we're talking about Saban, it's funny how none of his disciples that you've mentioned that has coached along Kiffin has not beaten Saban at all, but most of one has, yes, except
happened this season, Jimbo Fisher.
Right, but when it comes to Belichick's disciples, he can't seem to beat them. So that's a tell of two tells, isn't it? Like Saban and Belichick are from the same coaching tree, pretty much.
Well, not necessarily the same coaching tree. I mean, they coached together at Cleveland. How do you think the Browns feel about letting both Saban and Belichick go?
I know, right?
Those guys were on the same staff.
Yeah.
So the lesson there is coaches need time.
Yeah, exactly.
Coaches need time. Yeah. Again, it takes, and fans are impatient. I understand it. I understand why. You pay a lot of money to go and watch your teams play, but you've really got to understand what it takes to build a winning team. You've got to have a winning culture. And it's hard when you're moving pieces in and out with both, now in college, you've got a transfer portal. the NFL, you've got free agency. When I played, free agency, didn't really exist until later. So when you're with a team, you expect to be with that team your entire career. Now guys they're playing, and they're playing for contracts, not necessarily for franchises. They're looking for that next big contract. Obviously, if you're with a winning team, you hope to stay there, but it really boils down to money. So it makes it harder to consistently win. But those teams that manage to do so, it speaks to the people that they have leading the way.
You had a who's who guys on your teams in the 80s. Did that want to make you stay with the team, or did you want to go someplace? Did you want to go someplace else? Did you just want to stay?
No, I wanted to play my entire career at Dallas. That was a storied franchise at the time. The Cowboys had been to, I think, 5 Super Bowls, won 2. That was long before Bill Belichick, who was at that time coaching as an analyst and then linebackers for the New York Giants. That was long before he's won, I guess, 7 now. But yeah, I wanted to play my entire career for the Cowboys organization, one of the best in football, for the great Tom Landry. I played with right now 3 Pro Football Hall of Famers, and Tony Dorsett, Randy White, who I played against pretty much every day in practice, and Drew Pearson on offense, who was inducted just this year. And there will be a few others down the road. Guys like Too Tall Jones, Harvey Martin, who's passed on, but maybe a posthumous.
Guys had star-studded teams.
Yeah. So, listen, it was a great time to be playing for that team. Unfortunately, we played in 2 consecutive NFC Championship games and lost them both. Certainly should have won the first one in the 81-82 season. That's the game that's known as the catch with Montana to Clark.
Yeah. I remember that
over
one.
Dwight.
Even though I wasn't born, I saw highlights.
Well, you see it every year. It's a tremendous highlight. It's part of football history. That catch, because it was the start of the 49ers dynasty.
That's right.
They won 4 Super Bowls in the 80s.
Yeah.
One of my teammates in college, Eric Wright, played on 4 of those Super Bowl teams. And that first one, the one that they beat us to go to the Super Bowl, and they beat the Cincinnati Bengals. That should have been mine. I should have 1 ring.
You should, honestly.
Unfortunately, it's like I said, Byron, you got to have a lot of luck.
You got to have luck.
We won a lot of games. We played in playoffs 4 of the 6 years I was there. A lot of players never even make it to playoff games. Look at, I'm trying to think of a guy like Dan Marino. How many playoff games did he win?
He never won any. Yeah. I don't think he even went. I don't think he
exactly. Yeah. So, no, he did go. They played in 83.
And a lot of people say he's the not all time, but he's like up there with the greats.
He's top 5, top 10 quarterback just on his statistics alone.
Yeah. So it sucks.
But there are other guys that played.
Yeah.
Their entire career and never make it. I mean, Jackie Smith, who was an all pro, Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame tight end with the old St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
Never made it to a Super Bowl while he's with the Cardinals. He retired and then gets a call from the Cowboys to come in and join them. Mm-hmm. Makes it to the Super Bowl. And, unfortunately for Jackie, in spite of all the wonderful things he did in his career, all the great plays he made, he's unfortunately known or infamous for dropping a touchdown pass for the Cowboys in the end zone that ultimately would have beaten the Steelers and would have given the Cowboys one more world championship. So, and I still see Jackie regularly. He lives here in St. Louis also. Just a tremendous guy. And you see him, he's 81 years old. He looks like he can still play. Taking very good care of himself. And
You have to hook me up with him. I'd like to talk to him, chat it up.
See what I can do.
But let's talk.
Don't bring up that play. Don't bring up that play.
I won't. Let's talk about the '85 season. Obviously, that's when the Bears won it all. Were you guys competing at all against them for the playoffs that year? Because I know the Bears, they had a star-studded team too that year, and they weren't projecting to do nothing that year with Dick at the helm as the coach.
Well, that's true, and of course, Mike Ditka came to the Bears from the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
In fact, my rookie season, which was Mike's last year in Dallas, before teams hired special teams coaches, the assistant coaches would all coach one or two different special teams. Ditka happened to coach two of the special teams that I was on, the punt coverage team and kickoff return. So I got to know Mike very well. And of course, it was a big loss when we lost him to the Bears, but he didn't do too badly as a Bears head coach. Obviously led them to the Super Bowl in the 1986, the 85 season. But it's funny, the Bears, when we played them, I think we played them in the preseason, beat them in the preseason. And as the Cowboys always had a mystique. I think a lot of teams seem to, mentally were already beaten when they stepped on the field. And I think at the time that game kicked off in '85 against the Bears, I think the mystique was still there. The unfortunate thing about that game is that we, on three consecutive offensive series, we turned the ball over to them. And it wasn't until then they realized that with the defense that they were playing, they could just start teeing off. We were going to be throwing the ball the rest of the day. It wasn't until that point that, we gifted them that win. Then they thought, okay, we've got them on the ropes. And they just came after us with that aggressive 46 defense that they ran. And I think beating us 44-0 at Texas Stadium in our own backyard really, I think that kind of set the tone for the rest of the Bears that year and getting them to the Super Bowl. Figured if they could beat the mighty Cowboys, the team that Ditka cut his teeth on as a assistant coach and a team that he played for, if he could beat that team, he could probably beat anybody. And
was it because he blew you guys out? Was it because also you thought too he knew you guys so well? I mean, that's why he probably beat you guys that bad because
there was the familiarity. Of course, he knew the personnel very well.
Yeah.
But again, they had excellent personnel on defense. And when you spot a team 17 points in the first quarter, and you become one-dimensional offensively, it's a tremendous advantage that they had on defense. And we just didn't get it done. I mean, we were unproductive. I don't even know. I've never even looked at the statistics for that game, but I can tell you, I know we turned the ball over at least 3 times. And I don't know how many sacks. I bet there are 5 or 6 sacks that we gave up. Probably history wise, that probably at that time was probably among the most sacks we'd ever given up. But yeah, I think that game probably was the benchmark for the Bears that, hey, if they could beat Tom Landry and this team, they could probably beat anyone. And sure enough, I don't even know how many games they lost in the regular season, maybe 1 or 2, I don't know. But they made it all the way. And that team is one of the best all time. Got a team full of characters led by Jim McMahon and William the Refrigerator Perry, of course, and Mike Ditka, and Dan Hampton on defense, and Richard Dent, Steve McMichael, Otis Wilson, Wilbur Marshall, Ron Rivera. They had, man, I don't know that you ever have a more stacked or talented defensive personnel group. So Jeff Fisher, who was the coach of the Rams and the Titans, was on that team also. In fact, he was drafted the same year that I was drafted.
Even on that team, I forgot.
It kind of wish I'd gotten into coaching.
There you go.
I probably could have made a whole lot more money coaching.
You would have.
I would still be working today.
Yeah, exactly. Now, last night, I don't know if you saw the game, but it was 30 I
saw the second half, yeah.
Yeah, the snow flurries. Felt like it was
the
23.
Wind. The wind was like 50, 55 miles per hour. It was crazy.
Two-part question. Did you in your playing career, I know you were offensive line and it's different, but I know you played in that kind of weather when you were there, when you were because you played in Green Bay and all those cities, that northern weather. How difficult is it to play in conditions like that? What was that like for you as a player?
Full disclosure, I never played a game in Green Bay. Never played a game in Buffalo. Every time we played Green Bay, when I was on the team, we played them in Dallas. Every time we played Buffalo, we played them in Dallas.
That's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the worst weather conditions we ever had that I recall would have been playing in New York towards the end of the season when, cold and windy, but not that windy up in the Meadowlands. I think we played a cold game in Cincinnati, got beat once, got beat up there. But I don't recall any other games that we played where the conditions were that extreme. Now, ironically, the day that we played the weekend of the 81-82 championship games, we had we played in San Francisco. I think the temperature was 70 degrees, 60, 70, the high 60s, low 70s. We played on Sunday. The AFC championship game was on Saturday. I think it was maybe 10 degrees. The Chargers and the Bengals played in Cincinnati, and the Bengals won that game. I mean, that fortunately we were playing in those conditions, but it had to be tough with the Chargers that day. Yeah. So that was pretty extreme. I was able to dodge those really, really extreme cold conditions throughout my career. So that's a win. But I think I've only worn thermal underwear twice in my football career. Once in college, played Nebraska in 1978, and 1981 playing in the Meadowlands, the last regular season game against the Giants. Was the only other time that it was cold enough to wear long johns or thermal underwear.
But if you did have to play in those conditions, how would you handle it as a player, though? That's got to be tough in those kind of conditions.
Well, as a lineman, you don't really notice it. If you're moving, if you're on the field playing a lot, you that motion, that body. Most guys are wearing gloves anyway. I mean, if they're smart, you don't really notice it. It's if you're standing on the sidelines for extended periods of the whole game not playing, that's when it's cold. So you've got, you get the big capes or ponchos, and then you also have, the heaters on the sidelines that are, technology. These things have evolved over the years, so it's a lot better. But still, there's nothing like, being in motion and playing on the field when it's really cold like that. But listen, in the wind, you saw, I think, pregame, someone tried to kick a field goal, and you could actually see the ball. You could just see it about. Yeah. It just got hung up, almost like the wind caught it and dropped it straight down.
Even when the Bills went for that 33-yarder to put it down to 1 point, it sailed. It sailed on him, where it would have been good.
The wind was brutal. So now you can understand why teams have to be able to run the football. If you can run the ball with success, you can win a game. And that's what New England was able to do last night, right? Yeah. Mac Jones threw 3 footballs.
3 footballs, yeah.
3. He completed 2 of 3.
Yeah,
That's
19
the
yards.
lowest. That's got to be
Since
the lowest number
since
since
78,
78.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
78.
that's nuts. And they still won.
Yeah.
That's like a high school
Yeah,
statistic.
you weren't even
High school
drafted yet. You weren't even drafted yet.
What's that?
When the last time that happened, you weren't even drafted
Oh, so,
yet.
yeah. No, I was in college. Yeah, sure
Yeah.
was.
That's
Yeah. I mean,
crazy.
that's a statistic, it's 46 years ago or something like that. It's crazy,
Yeah.
a long time ago. No one would have ever even remembered that. But that's why these statisticians do a tremendous job of doing research on the spot, and in the NFL offices, just finding these crazy statistics that no one would ever even think of until it happens like
Yeah.
that.
So you obviously were coached by Landry. Not many coaches of nowadays are like Landry. So how tough was it to play for a guy like Landry?
Tom Landry was he was trying to think of the best descriptor. Old school comes to mind, but he was a very stoic, and there was a clear separation between coach and player. You would never see Coach Landry giving player high fives or slapping them on the butts or chest bumping or anything like that. And you wouldn't dare dump Gatorade on any of his suits and his fedora. You may not be there the next day.
Right. Yeah, you might be.
He was a legend. I mean, he was a monumental figure in the sport back then. Mm-hmm. Very tough, very serious. He did have a funny side to him, and in fact, if you ever look at, he did a commercial during the 1982 strike for American Express.
Mm-hmm.
When he's dressed up as a cowboy, he's got on a big cowboy hat and a long duster, and he's talking about something, whatever American Express in the script, and then the tagline is something like, "Because you never know when you're going to be surrounded by Redskins," or something like that. And then a bunch of Redskins players. You got to look that up on YouTube because you probably haven't seen it, but it's a classic commercial, and it just shows the human side of him during that time where there was no football. You're right. There was an NFL strike, a 9-week strike. But outside, when he's on the football field in the meeting rooms, I mean, completely serious. I mean, he took the game seriously, and he had the same expectations of his players. You had to study, you had to know the system, or you wouldn't play, or you wouldn't be on the team. So most of the guys that came through that system and played multiple years were very capable and could have played for virtually any team. But yeah, it was an experience. Looking back, I think the appreciation for playing for him is probably greater now because of what he was able to accomplish. Not that you didn't appreciate playing for him then, but when you reflect back, he's a historic figure in the game, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to play for him, have him as my coach, and then to play for an historic franchise like the Dallas Cowboys.
So let's see if you know this stat about you. When you were drafted by the Cowboys, you were the 3rd offensive lineman that they picked in the history of their career as an organization. John Nealon and Robert Shaw being chosen before. Did you know about that stat?
Yeah, John Nyland and Robert Shaw drafted 2 years before at the University of Tennessee. And they didn't take, I don't know if they took another first-round lineman in the first round.
They didn't. Not for a long
time. It was a long time. I think the highest before probably Tyron Smith, Flozell Adams.
Yeah, I would say him.
Pick was
right.
It was a 3rd-round pick. He was the highest.
I was going to say him. Yeah. I don't know if it was him, but I would have to say probably was him, Flozell.
Yeah.
That's crazy, don't you think? You were the only third one before. I mean,
Yeah, and it's
goes to
I
show
guess
how good you
it's a
were.
pretty good. Yeah, and and I will, and similarly at from the University of Missouri. The University of Missouri has had only 4 offensive linemen in the history of Mizzou
Yeah,
football
yeah,
drafted in the first round.
right.
3 all African American. Not that this is a racial thing, but 3 of them from all 4 from the state of Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
3 from St. Louis, 1 from Kansas City. One just passed away early this year. Russ Washington, the great Russ Washington, played for the San Diego Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Morris Towns was drafted by the Houston Oilers in '77. Then I came along in '81, and then a guy named John Clay in 1987. So Towns, myself, John Clay, we all played for public high school in the public high league in St. Louis, which shows you at the time, how great the talent was coming out of St. Louis. And just for reference, I'll give you 3 names, 3 of the bigger names that have come out of St. Louis in recent years. Zeke, the kid Kyron Williams, who's at Notre Dame now, from St.
Mm-hmm.
Louis. Jamison Williams, who's the number 1 receiver for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Mm-hmm.
And Hassan, I can't think of the guy's name, the Harrison or whatever, for Michigan, the running back from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He's a St. Louis kid also, for a suburb of St. Louis from Eureka, Missouri. But the talent is here. There's lots of talent that still comes out of the St. Louis area. The number 1 receiver who's verbally committed to Missouri, and today is December 7th. Signing day is 8 days away.
Yeah, I was going to say I am soon.
Luther Bird III is expected to sign with Missouri. He's the number 1 receiver coming out of college this year.
Well, there you go.
So the talent is there. We just gotta as the University of Missouri, we've got to keep the top level talent in the state, and that's what current head coach in his second year, Eli Drinkwitz, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to build that momentum and seal the borders and keep the best talent at home and attending the University of Missouri.
So, since you played most of your career, obviously in the NFC East, which in the '80s that was an all-out, tough-ass division.
It was the best, yeah.
Compared to what it is now, which I think is called the NFC least, because it is. No offense to the players, no offense to those players, but it's not as good as it was in the '80s and '90s. How hard was it to play against those teams, and what team did you have the most fits playing?
You mean from our division?
Yeah, because it was the toughest division.
Yeah, I would say the teams that gave us the most difficulty would have been Washington and New York.
Mm-hmm.
Philly would have been, right behind them. But even the Cardinals gave us some trouble at the time. The Cardinals were in the St. Louis Cardinals, which moved in, I think, '88 to Arizona. We're in the NFC East. But we beat them, and we lost to all those teams during my time. But the Giants were, they had some really good defensive teams. Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson. Just really good teams. And the Redskins had Dave Butts and Dexter Manley and Darrell Green. So they had some tremendous players also on defense, of course.
Would you say they were your bitter rivals more than Giants was?
Yeah. Cowboys Redskins is I think larger. It goes back to the George Allen, Tom Landry days, and every year, those games were circled on the schedule. It was the game where everyone got the tight assholes. because it was such an important game, if you will.
Yeah, it was.
And
In
so
those
much
days,
attention, so much focus was poured into, by both coaching staffs to beat those teams. It's kind of cool now, I'm friends with guys on both those teams, uh, to talk about the rivalry days back in the '80s.
yeah.
So it's nice to reflect back uh, on those days now when you get a chance to see guys that you played against, from every now and then, golf tournaments, other events around the country.
So besides from Lawrence Taylor, which you said was the best in your mind, the best defensive player in the history of the NFL, uh, you were a lineman. Who else you find challenging to guard?
Uh, I assume you mean blocking against. Yeah, there are a number of players. You go up against guys like Reggie White and Ezra Johnson and Jack Youngblood from the Rams, and um, I mean, geez, I played against guys like Jack Lambert and L.C. Greenwood, Mean Joe Green, throughout my career. So listen, I mean, late Lyle Alzado, uh, Howie Long. It's played against Leslie O'Neal. Some wonderful players, man. I mean, guys that and we talked about the guys on the Bears teams, of course, but just some tremendous players. And I think selfishly, I think I played in the greatest era during the late '70s and '80s. It was, to me,
You
the
did.
best era for professional football, for the NFL. That was kind of the years that sort of laid the groundwork for today's game. Went through two strikes, and to make the game the way it is today. The benefits that players are reaping today is because of the sacrifices that guys like I made and the guys that played before me made also. So they can thank us.
Yeah, there you
Today's
go.
players can thank us and the predecessors, the great names of the game, that the Deacon Joneses, the Bubba Smiths, the Merlin Olsons, the Johnny Unitises, those guys that really laid the groundwork for, and all the wonderful coaches, Don Shula, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Chuck Knox, George Allen, names that are, if there's a Mount Rushmore for football coaches, all those guys would be on there.
And last question before I let you go, because I know you got to go. Out of all the stadiums you played in, unfortunately, like you said, you didn't get to play in Lambeau or Bill Stadium. So that's two right there crossed off the list. Which stadium did you like to play in?
I actually like playing at RFK in Washington because it was grass.
Mm-hmm.
I think, playing on grass is what prolongs your career.
Mm-hmm.
All the injuries I suffered while playing, never got hurt in college, never missed a game. I mentioned that earlier. Every injury that I had was playing on artificial surfaces, and they were a lot worse then. We had a pretty good field at the old Texas Stadium in Dallas, or Irving, Texas. But the fields I got hurt on were in St. Louis, my hometown, which is one of those baseball stadiums also. And the surface was just awful, compacted, like playing on concrete with carpet on top. And the old Detroit Silverdome, where I had my second knee injury, which ultimately, ended my career. But yeah, I enjoyed playing at the old Jack Murphy Stadium where the Chargers played, and because it was one of the best grass fields I played on. And I mentioned RFK in Washington; those are some of the favorite places to play.
Perfect.
And of course, Texas Stadium, our home place. It was.
There you go.
Can't beat that home field. That was a wonderful place to play.
Well, I do appreciate your time. I'm glad we are in touch. I'll stay in touch with you. I'll send you the copy of the episode if you want. That way you can share it to YouTube as well. But yeah, it was fun. I'll definitely stay in touch. But I'll let you go. You stay safe. Keep staying safe out there. You have a good rest of your night, all right?
All right, Byron. Take care. Hey, it was a pleasure to join you, and maybe we can do it again someday.
Definitely we can. No problem. I'll be in touch. You have a
All
good
right.
night, all
Take care.
right?
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.